This is not how you make games. That's what Josef Fares was told when he pitched his first game, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. A game with deep emphasis on storytelling, where one player controls two characters at once. At least two major publishers rejected the project. Even industry veterans thought Josef's ideas were too weird and too risky. A story-driven adventure where the gameplay changes every 10 minutes? That's not how successful games are made, right? Except it worked. Not only did Brothers become the first game to define a new genre, but Josef's new studio, Hazelight, went on to create It Takes Two, a game so good it won Game of the Year, and then doubled down with the same approach on Split Fiction, a game that sold over 2 million copies in the first week since its release. So how did the guy who was told he was doing it all wrong end up creating a new way of making games that works so well? Turns out Hazelight has a formula, one that defies conventional ways of development, yet keeps winning, even with a team way smaller compared to most successful game companies. Let's break down what that formula is, how is it different, and why is it working so well. Josef Fares came to the game development from the movie industry.
The Oscars, you know? The Oscars! Yeah.
He directed pictures like Zozo, a movie about a boy separated from his family during the Civil War, or Cops, an award-winning comedy about a police station in a small town where nothing ever happens, so the officers start staging crimes just to keep their jobs. Josef's roots in the movie industry played a huge role in his game's success. In many ways, Hazelight approaches creating a video game in a very similar way to creating a movie. At the beginning of the production of their most recent game, Split Fiction, instead of thinking of how the game starts and progresses with story, the team started from the very ending of the game. Once they understood how the game ends and what kind of gameplay they want during that ending, they went on to reconstruct how the whole game might look like and how the story will unfold to lead to this ending. This is also how many screenwriters and directors approach creating a movie. The ending of the story is extremely important, if not the most important part of the movie. This is what you're leaving your audience with to go home from the cinema. The emotions and thoughts that the viewer takes away from a movie are heavily dependent on how the movie ends. Although not all filmmakers do this, it is quite a common approach in the movie industry, and it definitely works for the story that Hazelight games tell to the player. Starting the game production with an ending instead of beginning isn't the only element that Hazelight Studio borrows from the movie industry. An aspect that is even more important and impressive is how they approach the design and production of gameplay bits. When you are watching a movie, every scene has its own role and shows a unique situation. In Pulp Fiction, you only get to see the famous apartment scene once.
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it? Yes!
It doesn't randomly repeat itself, and it's never reused a second time throughout the movie just to fill a blank space. You don't get to see the ship breaking in half more than once in Titanic. And in The Dark Knight, Joker doesn't show his magic pencil trick every 10 minutes. The same rule isn't really true for most video games. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, clearing out a castle from enemies happens a couple dozen times, while battling an extremely tough boss in Elden Ring happens every 30 to 60 minutes. Unless, like me, you get stuck on one and have to repeat it 100 times before moving on.
I am Melania, Blade of Nicola.
Such repetition of mechanics is a natural element of video games, and as long as the developers don't go as far as reusing the same locations or enemies too many times with little variation to them, it's generally accepted. What makes Hazelight approach unique is that players don't get to repeat same gameplay mechanics almost at all. Similar to how movies are constructed with unique scenes happening one by one without repetition, in a Hazelight game, players get to experience unique gameplay mechanics happening one by one without repetition. In It Takes Two, the game kicks off with you chasing an electrical socket through a 3D platforming section filled with quirky interactions. Moments later, you are solving puzzles using mechanics like throwing nails and hammering them down, only to ditch those completely and swap them for honey and matchstick-powered guns a few minutes later. No mechanic sticks around for long, and none are reused across the game. This ever-evolving design philosophy isn't something you can plan out and execute like a traditional core mechanic, such as firing a bow in Horizon Zero Dawn or swinging through the city in Spider-Man. Coming up with an idea and prototyping a new mechanic might take a month or so, but polishing it to Hazelight's level of quality is a whole different challenge. In one of the interviews, Josef Fares revealed that a dragon riding scene from Split Fiction, which lasts around 10 minutes in the final game, took 8 months to develop. And that's just one of dozens of unique gameplay mechanics packed into this experience. This design also comes with a specific promise. With every Hazelight game, players now expect the gameplay to constantly evolve, surprising them with fresh mechanics and challenges from start to finish. The team at Hazelight was able to pull this off for a few key reasons. Most notably, an approach to game development that yet again mirrors the way movies are made. In film production, shooting a scene only happens after a long period of preparation. Before actors step in front of the camera, the script is locked, the lighting is rigged, and the microphones are tested. Strangely enough, that's not how most AAA games are made. If you were to shoot a movie scene the same way many blockbuster games are made, you would be building the set, assembling the camera, and rewriting the script, all at the same time as filming the actors that are constantly changing their wardrobe and makeup. The dialogue lines might change at the same time they are spoken, and the location, story, and the entire direction could shift multiple times before moving on to the next scene. Building AAA games often feels like laying down the tracks while the train is already moving. Hazelight, however, took a different path. Before jumping into full production, they focus on developing a custom toolkit in Unreal Engine, allowing them to prototype a wide variety of mechanics, from shooting laser guns to driving boats. They also map out the entire game ahead of time, much like planning out scenes for a film, outlining the story and defining the kind of gameplay each moment would deliver. For Split Fiction, this meant writing the game design document over 130 pages long, with details about narrative and hints about some of the gameplay bits, way before production even began. Another crucial skill that Hazelight has mastered within this approach is knowing when to stop. If you were to design a combat for a game like Devil May Cry, you would probably spend years refining it, fine-tuning every combo, animation, and frame. But for Hazelight, building a mechanic like riding a futuristic bike or navigating a level as a pig cannot take that long. It simply doesn't fit their model. There is a moment where the team decides this is good enough, and they move on, because adding too much depth or polish into a singular mechanic could actually hurt the overall experience. Even if the team comes up with an amazing idea that would work so well that even a longer than usual chunk of the game would be able to focus on it, it would break the core promise of Hazelight games, that gameplay is constantly evolving and changing. On top of that, about 20 to 30% of mechanics from Hazelight games get cut early in development. if they don't fit the vision, clash with the story, or simply cannot reach that sweet spot of being polished just enough to deliver a satisfying, short-lived experience. With ever-changing gameplay at its core, Hazelight truly refined its formula with their second game. While Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons wasn't officially made under the Hazelight name, in reality it was the first title developed by the same team that would go on to form the studio. And with that first recipe proving itself, their next project, A Way Out, introduced the second key ingredient to Hazelight DNA: cooperation. But Hazelight take on co-op is very different from what you see in most multiplayer or co-op games. First and foremost, Hazelight games are built around a strict rule: they cannot be played solo. From day one, every scene, every gameplay section and every mechanic is designed for two players. The stories always feature two protagonists, with no main character taking the spotlight. Gameplay mechanics are not just split between players, they are tightly interconnected. One player's mechanic often enables or directly affects the other's progress. For example, in Split Fiction, when navigating through the lake levels, only one player can swim. Their partner has to rely on them to move through the environment without touching the water. In It Takes Two, during the Wasp Queen boss fight, May can only use her matchstick gun effectively when Cody shoots honey onto targets first. This design philosophy brings its own challenges. One of the biggest is making sure that neither player's ability feels more powerful or cooler than the others. Instead, abilities are designed to complement or even depend on each other. This gets especially tricky during boss fights. A clever workaround that designers often use in Hazelight games is making the boss focus on the player who cannot currently deal any damage to the boss,
Help me out here!
giving this player something to do while their partner sets up the attack. For instance, during the Ice King fight in Split Fiction, the player that is controlling Zoe has to dodge the boss attacks, while their partner who is controlling Mio is fishing out a bomb to create a damage opportunity. The mechanics in Hazelight games also naturally encourage communication. You will constantly be saying things like, "Hey, can you take out that guard so I can pass through?" Or, "Can you jump on this shovel so I can fart myself towards that apple?" Yeah, that pig section in Split Fiction probably deserves its own award, although probably not an Oscar.
The Oscars, you know? The Oscars!
Another interesting design challenge the team faced while developing Split Fiction and It Takes Two was this. For many players, these games might be among the very first they have ever played. Since both titles are couch co-op experiences, it is common for seasoned players to invite their friends, partners, or family members who rarely or literally never played any game. Hazelight had to account for that. But instead of adding a separate difficulty settings per player, which by the way could break the feeling of a shared experience, the team focused on designing around this imbalance. You have probably seen a lot of TikToks where experienced players are forced to wait for their partner to catch up, simply because the other player is still getting used to the controls or mechanics. But that's exactly what makes this approach work. The game never punishes players for those moments. There are no timers or fail states tied to pacing, and the challenges are never so demanding that new players couldn't learn them with a bit of patience. When designing the co-op experience, the goal of the team wasn't to reward the more skilled player. It was to keep both players engaged, regardless of their experience. In It Takes Two, this design philosophy is especially clear in the minigames scattered throughout the world. Those minigames range from coordination-heavy challenges to more logic-based ones like chess. The idea was to offer a variety of skill expressions. Hazelight wanted to avoid the classic scenario where one player dominates simply because they have held a controller more often. Instead, the team aimed to create a space where everyone could shine, even if it's the first time they have ever picked up a gamepad. Another piece of what makes up for successful Hazelight formula is how the narrative and cinematic moments are designed. Not just for one viewer sitting in front of a screen, but for two people sharing the experience together. Many scenes are intentionally over the top or exaggerated. It's not just for drama or comedy, but it's to provoke a shared reaction. Moments that might feel too silly or overwhelming in a single-player game suddenly land better when they spark that out loud "Whoa, what the hell is going on?" or "Are you seeing this?" between two players.
What the hell, Zoe? What? Oh God! I know! Let's just end this!
It's this blend of constantly evolving gameplay, emotional storytelling, and an extremely consumer-friendly approach that has turned Hazelight into one of the most successful studios in the industry. Despite being a team of just around 80 people, they have managed to deliver bold and creative visions. And even while working under a big publisher like Electronic Arts, they stayed creatively independent. As Josef Fares said in few interviews, EA doesn't interfere with what the Hazelight is doing. The studio is rather informing their publisher of what is coming next, and Electronic Arts supports them through this process. Clearly, even if your team isn't extremely big, if your vision and creative design is strong enough to bring millions of players right after game's release, even the biggest publishers will treat you right. And while cooperation is now deeply embedded into Hazelight's DNA, I wouldn't be surprised if their next project is actually a return to single player, something in the spirit of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I'm genuinely curious to see how their ever-changing gameplay formula has evolved for a single player since Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons came out. Although, if the next game is co-op again, I'll be there day one, especially if my partner is up for it. Hopefully this time we'll get back those competitive minigames from It Takes Two that I totally always ended up winning. No need to double check that fact with my partner. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of Hazelight formula for making games. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out the next deep dive. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!